In today's video, I'll be giving you an update on the stimulus negotiations as well as discussing some of the headlines you may have been seeing around lately, like President Trump signs off on $1.8 trillion stimulus package, or maybe other headlines like Republicans reject stimulus proposal. I'll be talking about all of that in this video, as well as the latest updates and where we stand with the stimulus negotiations. But hey, let's get right into it. As always, my videos are for everybody, including Social Security retirement to disability and survivors, SSI, supplemental security income, VA, RRB, low income, and no income. But hey, everybody, today is Monday, October 12th. If you're new here, please be sure to hit the subscribe button, and thank you so much for your support. I really appreciate it. Thanks for being here, and thanks for being part of this community. All right, let's get right into this and talk about what's going on with the latest stimulus negotiations and where do we stand. Over the weekend, Nancy Pelosi sent a letter to her Democratic colleagues, and in the letter, she said that the current offer from the Republicans in regards to testing, tracing, and treatment is insufficient. So as we know, once again, she did not like this proposal. However, it is getting us closer. So I'll talk about that here a little bit further in just a second. Also, over the weekend, President Trump was interviewed, and in that interview, he showed his optimism and support for additional stimulus. As we've known, he's been very vocal about additional stimulus, which is great. But also, at the same time, in his interview, he said, "We're having a hard time with Nancy Pelosi. She thinks she can influence the election," which is actually kind of funny because once again, another jab at Nancy Pelosi. But this is not uncommon, as we know that Nancy Pelosi and the president, as well as other Republicans, basically they all hate each other. It's a little bit entertaining to see them jab at each other constantly, but at the same time, it's a little bit pathetic considering we're counting on these people to work in the best interest of the American people. So even though they're not working together very well and they can't stand each other, we're counting on them at the same time to come together on our behalf because basically it's in their hands. Our future is essentially, like our short-term future is in the hands of about 3 or 4 people right now, which is kind of sad and scary at the same time. However, moving on. Mark Meadows, as we know, he's the White House Chief of Staff, and Steve Mnuchin, I've been talking about him literally in every one of my videos. He's the Treasury Secretary. They issued a letter to Congress over the weekend, and they asked lawmakers to pass legislation allowing them, or the administration, President Trump, to redirect $130 billion of unused PPP. That's the Payroll Protection Program for small business. However, we can anticipate that's probably going to be rejected, as Nancy Pelosi has also made it very clear that she is not interested in a piecemeal bill. However, moving on. So here we know the Republicans, their current proposal has a price tag of roughly $1.8 to $1.9 trillion. So we know that. This is the proposal that was just offered just the other day. However, that $1.8 to $1.9 trillion of spending has within it $400 billion of redirected funding from previous legislation. So we know that that $400 billion is actually from the CARES Act that they're just redirecting. So this proposal that they're offering actually has like a real, like kind of intrinsic price tag of $1.5 trillion. However, $400 billion of which is being redirected. I just feel like, who cares? I mean, you know what I mean? Like, they're redirecting it. That's great. That $400 billion is essentially already spent in the mind and the eyes of Congress because they approved it way back in March. It was never used, but in the eyes of Congress, it's basically already spent because they allocated it. They just never spent it. So they're asking, hey, can we grab this $400 billion and redirect it as part of this proposal? So, you know, who knows? Hopefully they'll grab it and use it and just push this thing through. Whatever allows them to approve this a little bit more quickly, you know, that's probably a good thing. So anyway, Republicans. So there's been a lot of talk and there's headlines. Over the weekend, there's been a lot of talk about these headlines of Republicans rejected the current stimulus proposal. Here's the deal. Here's the deal with that. There's a lot of people that are kind of freaking out about this and really worried about this, but here's the deal. It's a handful of Republicans that are not cool with this current proposal, this 1.8 or even 1.5 trillion. There's a handful of about 15 or 20 or so Republicans that are making a lot of noise about this right now that don't love this because they don't want to approve any additional funding. However, we know that the Senate is controlled by the Republicans. Yes, we know it's controlled by the Republicans. However, it's not like a huge significant majority in there. So we know that, yeah, that's fine if 15 or 20 Republicans reject it. At the same time, it can still pass the Senate provided everybody else offers their support. And we know that a lot of Republicans have actually vocalized their support for additional stimulus. So, of course, the people who make the most noise are going to be the ones who grab the headlines, right? So a handful of people here are just making a bunch of noise, voicing their opinions, saying, hey, we reject this, we don't like it at all. But you know what? That's okay. You don't need everybody to approve it in order for it to still pass. We just need the majority or so to offset the people who do not want it. So hopefully that clears up a little bit further with this, this talk about and these headlines of, oh yeah, it's going to be rejected. So don't really worry about that too much. Also, one quick thing that I just thought of, there's a lot of people talking about this Mitch McConnell and, he's rejecting it and he doesn't support it. Again, I've been talking about this for a while too. It doesn't matter what Mitch McConnell says right now. Who cares? Don't worry about what Mitch says. He's not in the negotiations at this time as far as pushing this through and getting it approved. He's not part of the negotiating team. So don't worry about Mitch McConnell right now and what he says. It's not up to him at this point. So I just wanted to clear that up. That actually wasn't even in my notes, but I wanted to talk about it anyway. Also, this is kind of funny. Larry Kudlow. I've been talking about him a little bit lately. He was out over the weekend and he threw this out, and I'll talk about it here in a second. He threw this out and said he thinks that Steve Mnuchin could actually throw out a stimulus proposal over the $2.2 trillion proposal that Nancy Pelosi currently has on the table. So I don't know where Larry Kudlow comes up with some of this stuff, but he says some things that are completely off the wall. He should really just not even make any remarks on this stuff because he just gets everybody all jacked up. There's no evidence of Steve Mnuchin coming out and offering more than the $2.2 trillion. That simply doesn't make sense considering they've been slowly working their way up to $2 trillion. Why would he just come out with a flyer saying, yep, I'm going way over $2.2 trillion. Here we go. Let's go for this. It's just not going to happen. So I don't know where Larry comes up with this stuff, but it'd probably be better if he just doesn't say anything at all because he gets everybody all worked up. And then there's all these headlines out there that this huge stimulus proposal is going to be presented when in actuality, the likelihood of that happening is probably really low. So don't count on that. But again, Larry has nothing to do with these negotiations. He's just an economic White House advisor. I mean, he has nothing to do with this right now. So also, I want to talk about one other headline, which is the President Trump signed off on the $1.8 trillion stimulus proposal. All right. So yes, over the weekend, we saw tons of headlines. We saw titles for YouTube videos all over the place saying, I almost choked myself right there. Sorry, excuse me. We saw all these headlines over the weekend of President Trump, apparently signing off. So here's the deal with that. It's not passed. There's not a stimulus proposal that has passed. However, President Trump basically gave Steve Mnuchin the authority to move forward with the $1.8 trillion proposal. President Trump basically just said, yeah, Steve, go ahead, present it to Nancy Pelosi. So President Trump just gave his authority to Steve Mnuchin to move forward with presenting Nancy Pelosi with that proposal. That's all it is. So there's all these headlines out there of people trying to say like, oh yeah, it's approved, it's signed. President Trump signed it. He just gave his authority to say, yep, go for it, present it. That's it. So don't get all caught up with that. As soon as there is a real bona fide proposal that President Trump signs, of course, it needs to be passed by the House and Senate first. It needs to go through those people first before it goes to President Trump for his signature to solidify everything and to sign it into law. So as soon as we get that, of course, we'll let you know. But of course, there's always going to be headlines of all this stuff, but whatever. Anyway, hopefully that cleared it up. But again, here we are. We're starting a new week. As always, we're hoping that these people can come together finally for once and actually get something done. The days are ticking away here in October. We're getting closer and closer to that election. And, Steve Mnuchin and Nancy Pelosi have plans to continue their negotiations. But, they are actually getting pretty close, which, we've been saying that for a long time. But really, truly, if you look at the numbers, they actually are getting pretty dang close. So I'll keep you posted. Enjoy your Monday, everybody, and I'll catch you soon. Hopefully, I'll be back later this afternoon with some really good news. But hopefully, we'll see what happens today. Enjoy your day, and I'll catch you later. See ya. Stop recording video.